All right, well, welcome to the importance of nitrogen. Finally, only took us 10 weeks to get to this atom. And so nitrogen is very important in our bodies. We start with DNA. Could not make DNA without nitrogen. So they are called, one of the components of nucleic acids are called the nitrogenous bases because they're just loaded with nitrogen. And then look at all those NHs. We're going to get lots of H bonding. So that's why in the picture in the upper right, you see the dots. So remember, H bonds are dots. They're attractions between hydrogens that are attached to a nitrogen and then either another nitrogen or an oxygen. Also ATP, since ATP is a nucleic acid, we see something other than just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. We see the nitrogens and then, of course, the phosphates that we talked about the other day. And amino acids. The word amino means nitrogen, so the amines. And so there's lots, all those fuchsia hearts, right? Or yeah, are nitrogens. And there's so many molecules in our body that have nitrogens. So epinephrine or adrenaline, there's nitrogen. So it might just be one nitrogen in all those carbons, but that one nitrogen does make all the difference. So if you don't have a topic yet, the word alkaloid means a nitrogen containing compound that is coming from Mother Nature, from plants specifically. And there are so many, and they do so many things, wonderful things and not so wonderful things. But from caffeine in the coffee, believe it or not, yeah, I'm looking at my little list here for you all. Caffeine hasn't been taken. The molecules in chocolate, there's several. Morphine from the poppy plant. So yeah, cayenne, capsaicin is another one. So we're going to be looking at amines and amides, or amides. People say them different ways. So an amine is the molecule on the left. It's a nitrogen with three things around it. So that is one of the keys with nitrogen. Nitrogen makes three bonds. So remember, oxygen's made two, carbon's made four, nitrogen's right there in the middle of the two. It makes three bonds. So in the amine group, the nitrogen can make bonds in three different ways. It could be, the R stands for a carbon group. It could either be one R group, one carbon group, that's called a primary amine. It could be to two R groups, that's a secondary amine, or it could be to three R groups, that's a tertiary amine. But it's always three bonds, and those lone dots up there, that makes a big difference because amines are going to do something that none of the other groups have done. An amide should look just like an esterish compound to you, except the nitrogen in place of the oxygen. So the nitrogen is connected directly to a carbonyl group, to a carbon with a double bonded oxygen. So the nitrogen doesn't have the double bonded oxygen, but it is connected to a carbonyl, and that makes it an amide. All right, so possibly the most famous of all in our culture currently would be caffeine. And caffeine works because in our bodies, we naturally have this molecule known as adenosine. Now, adenosine is also one of the nucleotides in DNA, so in ATP. But adenosine by itself, the nucleotide, is the nitrogenous base, excuse me. It actually is a neurotransmitter, and it slows down our neural activity. It's what allows us to feel sleepy. It dilates our blood vessels, so we become oxygenated while we sleep, and we sleep. Isn't that an awesome picture? It's kind of how I am at night. That's how my animals sleep with me. And so there's a picture of adenosine. So it is actually a nucleotide. And so it's circled there, all the nitrogens. And so caffeine, there we go. So there's a couple extra, looks very similar in shape. And so what caffeine does is caffeine binds to the same receptor, but it's not exactly the same. It's got a couple of those double bonded oxygens and some methyl groups. And so it binds and blocks the receptor. So adenosine cannot bind. So it's an antagonist. And you're very alert. You can't sleep because adenosine is what makes you sleepy. All right. That is not a molecule of meditation, but there are actually 10 molecules, and all of them actually, I'm pretty sure, have amines. I talked about several of them when we did the esters, but the #1 molecule of meditation is anandamide. So I'm going to do my class presentation for you all right now. So there's the amide. You see the nitrogen connected right to the double bonded O, and that's a picture of me. This would be the molecule I would pick. I said pick a molecule you can personalize. That's Hell's Canyon in eastern Oregon, I'm actually looking over Oregon. And anandamide is a neurotransmitter. And the name comes from Ananda. Ananda was, well, actually this molecule was first isolated in 1992. So a reminder, when you do your class presentation, you want to make sure you have pictures of molecules. It is chemistry. So pictures of molecules. Keep putting up the picture of the molecule, especially if you're comparing it to other molecules. So Ananda was the Buddha's right-hand man. When the Buddha was going around after he had had his enlightened moment and going around and helping to give talks and trying to help other people, Ananda was the one who would be getting his things ready for him. And then Buddha died, and there were others who had reached enlightenment, and they were trying to help people. And so they were having this big gathering, and Ananda had not yet. And they were all like, Ananda, come on, you need to reach enlightenment. And he's trying so hard. And the harder he tried, the harder he failed. And then one night, he just was so tired and just relaxed, and the moment happened. And so the word Ananda is the Sanskrit word for eternal bliss, for divine bliss, like bliss beyond bliss. They don't actually have a word for joy. I was always told there is no word for my name in Sanskrit because they don't actually have the word joy. They have the word bliss. And so this is the bliss molecule. And then an amide. The reason I got inspired and read this article and made this slideshow was a couple of years ago. I was listening to my meditation teacher give a talk, and she was talking about this molecule, but she couldn't say the molecule. And then I've listened to chemists try to say the molecule, and they can't. So chemists have trouble with the word ananda, and most meditation people have trouble with the word amide. So get the best of both worlds, right? So anandamide. And so it is an agonist for the CB1 receptors. So you can see where we're going here. So this is natural. All of your brains make anandamide. This is inside of us, in our brains. It's actually in all of the tissues of our body. They have actually found this molecule and receptors for it. And many animals also have this. So it's called an endocannabinoid. And that is because this is what THC, all the cannabinoids, the CBDs, are somehow mimicking anandamide. And so I get to that in the slideshow. So again, another molecule. It was really hard actually to find pictures of the molecule without marijuana shown in the picture. So it is made in our body from omega-6 fatty acids. And yeah, endo means inside. So THC would be an exocannabinoid because it's coming from outside. So this is where the chemistry gets really cool, or the biochemistry. So this ends with ASE, and that is an enzyme, fatty acid amide hydrolase. And so anandamide is broken down rapidly by this enzyme, FAAH. So it's a hydrolase, it cuts it, like how we're going to show in class. So actually, let's go back. Well, you can't see but anywhere next to like how we cut the esters, it's going to be next to the carbonyl group, the carbon double bonded O, and the nitrogen. It just cuts it right there. It's a simple reaction. It's so simple. You can't break covalent bonds without the enzyme. And sadly, most of us have this enzyme. 80% of humans have this enzyme. Oh, wait a minute. I said 80%. Turns out 20% of the world population have a mutation. Who has the mutation is the question mark. They have the mutation and they don't make this enzyme, which means my theory is puberty is when this enzyme becomes expressed. You have enhanced levels of happiness. you're always happy. This molecule, anandamide, is always there because you're lacking the ability to break it down. And so I have this theory, and I'm pretty sure it's a hypothesis. It could become a fact. Children are so naturally happy, right? They're smiling, always smiling. That puberty is when this enzyme becomes activated. Anyway, you can ponder that. So University of Calgary, remember you're supposed to find 2 studies, have fun studies that you can talk about and put it into words that we can understand. So University of Calgary compared a group of genetically happy humans with rodents. And they injected these rodents, meaning the mice or the rats, I don't remember which, were injected with the gene so it blocked the enzyme, and the rodents were really happy. And what they did is when they looked at the people who genetically lacked the enzyme, and I am pretty sure it's the Tibetans. I have never met a Tibetan who wasn't always smiling. That they had enhanced levels of anandamide. And they actually, this is the cool part, they were able to extinguish fear-based memories. So we've been living for a year in fear. So who's going to be able to move on? There's ways, though. Just wait. We're getting to it, that we can all become like the monks that are always happy. So they also found they had greater connectivity between the cognitive planning area, the front of our cortex, the brain, and the amygdala, which is our emotional memory. So better connectivity. And so there you go, Mickey Mouse, right? Happy monks, happy mice. Better communication between these 2 key centers leads to lower anxiety and greater emotional stability. Oh, look, your teacher finally remembered to put a reference there, and you will too. You can put it at the bottom of the slides. That's fine. I know you're all taught to put it at the end, and to me, it's like, what does that mean? Anyway, so how can you be happy like Mickey Mouse is always happy? Well, one, it is actually the runner's high. So they've been claiming it was endorphins, but it turns out it's not the endorphins, it's anandamide. The more a person exercises, the more the body actually releases anandamide. And it is a long time exercise, like it's the like at 2 hours or something, or over an hour. And you've all been there where, and it doesn't mean you have to keep running, but if you go for a long hike in nature and you hit that point of just bliss and contentment, where you're just content. Actually is a natural pain reliever, and it's a natural anxiety reliever. Isn't that an awesome word? Anxiolytic. And it helps your body release more dopamine, which is our reward motivation neurotransmitter that gets so much publicity. All right, so yeah, it comes from meditation. Regular meditators and mindfulness practitioners, people who pray regularly, had the highest levels of anandamide, regular meditators, much higher than exercise. So exercise helps, but so we need both. I think there's an epigenetic shift that happens with the DNA, that you actually get to a point where you can block that gene. And so you're blocking the enzyme, and then anandamide just stays there. And like I said, it's on all your cells are finding receptors. So your immune system works in more bliss. Your digestive system works in more bliss. And everybody just wants to be around you because you're in bliss. All right. So let's look at the endo-anandamide that your brain does make. Oh, and the external, which is THC. And so marijuana does affect our mood, sleep, and appetite, just like the chemical that's already made by your body. And so THC, there's a picture of THC. So how anandamide wraps around makes it, that was in the previous slide, excuse me. So anandamide was one chain, but it bends around and wraps around and makes the molecule look the same as the THC, which actually has the rings. And so THC actually binds to the receptor and stimulates it, just like anandamide. So I want to put a comment here, because you've all heard about cocaine and You shouldn't go and be doing cocaine, right? Because cocaine actually does this to your dopamine receptors. It binds your dopamine receptors and stimulates them. And so you're always in this pleasure place. But what happens is your body stops making dopamine. Something to think about. So is there a way we could just naturally stay in bliss? And it is learning, it's getting over the hump and becoming somebody who regularly finds a peaceful, quiet place. And the CBDs, this is actually interesting. They work very differently, and they actually inhibit the enzyme, so your body stays in a natural state of the bliss. So this is not going to be part of any lab. We're not doing THC and CBDs or any of these I'm going to talk about. So this is a picture from 2014 from Harvard, the healthy brain naturally, and the person who is just the weekend marijuana user, just in case you've never seen the pictures. All right. Another study is about anandamide and the embryo. Chemical messenger between the embryo and the uterus is anandamide. And it is actually the first communication between mother and baby is the bliss molecule. How awesome is that? And it has been shown THC interferes with the signal. So when they exposed mice to THC-like compounds, they had lower survival of the embryos, and they actually had birth defects. I don't know how they exposed the mice to THC, but let's hope they didn't do that. Oh, look, a reference again. All right. So we're in THC. Are there other ways that you can enhance anandamide? Turns out chocolate is an agonist. It actually enhances your anandamide naturally. So dark chocolate, has to be dark chocolate. Milk chocolate doesn't do this. Dark chocolate contains N-acetylethanolamine. Nobody has ever picked this molecule, which actually prevents the breakdown of anandamide, which means it somehow blocks the enzyme. And so that's the picture. It's really short. And so maybe because it's so short, the enzyme sees, oh, an amide. Oh, I'm going to hook onto it. The R group means it can be different lengths there. All right. It is a cannabinoid. Oh, most cannabinoids have long carbon chains attached to them. There's also 3 other molecules in chocolate that have a similar shape to anandamide and actually can bind to the endocannabinoid receptors. So there's one of the molecules. Surprisingly, no one has picked any of the molecules in chocolate or caffeine. Been really surprised. So if you're not liking your topic, lots of time to swap. And yeah, you can even buy chocolate as a periodic table. Interestingly, the dark chocolate, yeah. What families? Which ones are the dark chocolate? Here you go. They don't know who watches my videos, right? You can answer me. I'll give you a bonus point. Why not? All right. Number 2, molecule of meditation is serotonin, the happy neurotransmitter. So low serotonin, you're sad or you're angry. The Hulk, that whole thing that happened to good friend Bruce Banner, he destroyed his serotonin. He has no serotonin left when he's the Hulk. That's what happened. So they've done studies. This was a really cool study a student talked about who did serotonin once. And that's what I mean, find some really cool, interesting studies. And also the studies should be like in the past decade-ish. So don't quote a study from 1980 as one of your studies, because sometimes that would mean that that study, some of the findings from that study may have changed. That was a student last year. Their whole presentation was based off a study, and then a couple of us were like, they've proven that study wrong. So just be careful with that. Anyway, this was a study. This is more a sociology study that they had a screen and they played a game. These people were playing a game with each other. So like my son Joey and I, and we didn't know, and whoever won the video game would get to zap the other person. So you had zappers attached to you. And so he would keep winning because he's much better at the games than me. And so he keeps zapping me, but just a nice, sweet child for mother zap of a 1. And maybe I'd win once in every 100 games and I'd give him a little zap of a 1. And so Then, unbeknownst to Joey, they come and give me a cocktail, and in it is a serotonin inhibitor. So they block my serotonin. And so I'm starting to get more aggressive. I'm becoming like the Hulk. I start winning more, but I start zapping him with 3s and 4s because I'm like, ha ha, take this, Joey. And Joey's like, whoa, what's going on? And he starts reacting to me and naturally blocking his serotonin. And so he starts zapping me back, and unbeknownst to him, they come and give me a cocktail that makes my serotonin levels back higher, which is the antidepressants and stuff that keep your serotonin in the synapse longer, so it's working, and I become much more peaceful. And so without the drugs, laughter actually can do it. And so I go back down to joy. So that's why it's called our happy neurotransmitter. Scientists from University of Montreal found that meditation has a very much a direct impact on levels of serotonin. Yeah, try to find a picture of the Dalai Lama or talk where he's not laughing. Oh my gosh, I had a laser there for a moment. All right, 90% of your serotonin receptors, they're not in your brain. A very small amount of serotonin receptors are in your brain. So you've heard the term butterflies in the stomach. Your gut, 90% of the serotonin receptors are actually in your gut. So we call them neurotransmitters, but most of the neurotransmitters are acting all over our body, not just in our brain. And so serotonin affects our mood, our social behavior, our appetite, our digestion. So if you're constipated, things aren't moving, you ate something bad, you have an upset stomach, your nerves, you're not smiling, you're just, right? Who's constipated and smiling? And so, yeah, it actually regulates the movement of our small intestines, and anti-constipation, anti-diarrhea drugs actually work by targeting serotonin. And yeah, so, and there is relation to our microbiota. So a little bit over 50% of our cells are bacterial, and we want friendly bacteria, and you determine that by your diet. You need the microbiome diet, never shows salami. It is always the legumes and the fruits and the vegetables. And so it has to be something high in fiber. Your bacteria wants fiber. Yeah, so respect your microbiome. And you can find all sorts of slides like this, but the thing they all have in common is eating whole food, eating real food, and going for a healthy amount of exercise. Vitamin D, what an awesome molecule. Yeah, there are these slides that show that, those charts. I've always had trouble with these charts. The noradrenaline does this, and serotonin does this, and dopamine does that. To me, calling this is the happy neurotransmitter, and that's this transmitter, it doesn't matter. They're all to keep us in a place of bliss. This is fascinating. And so I hesitated if I wanted to keep the slide, because whenever I show this slide, the first email I get is somebody saying, hey, I want to do psilocybin as my molecule, not like, oh, I want to do serotonin. And so, yes, the hallucinogens mimic serotonin. So serotonin has an indole ring, which is this double ring, which is also what's found in the nucleotides of DNA, ATP, all of that. And so here's serotonin. You can see it there, and you can see the look of it. And then as you go down, we have DMT, psilocin, and psilocybin, which are from the magic mushrooms. And then in the middle are the catechol. So I mentioned the word catechol. It's that double OH on the benzene ring. So it's like a double phenyl, but the OHs are next to each other. And that's what makes, just below it, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine are all catechols. And so you can see mescaline, LSD, amphetamines. And so if you take amphetamine, which is over on the left side, and you put a methyl on the left side there, that then becomes methamphetamine. So it's a methylamphetamine, and it was the easiest one to make. You make it in your garage. Don't do that. So just a quick comment. Normal is on the left, and you keep doing these kind of drugs, you're not normal. And it takes a long time to get back to normal. Meditation does not cause destruction. So that's what drugs do. Meditation makes it even more blissful. It doesn't cause that. It keeps you in a state. So number 7, skipping to number 7, melatonin, because we're talking about nitrogen compounds. And so melatonin is everybody knows it as a sleep neurotransmitter. That is such a disservice to melatonin. It is just that darkness activates it. If you do not own a sleep mask, buy a good sleep mask. Joey got me one and I kind of rolled my eyes at him, but it is amazing. It's totally changed it. I have the dark shades and stuff, but the dark curtains, but the mask, and I even like in meditation will often put it on because it just is amazing. Um, you have to have complete darkness for your body to do what it needs to do, which also means you have to turn off your computer, your phone, everything after 10 o'clock at night, because that interferes with your body's ability to make melatonin. Melatonin affects your appetite, anxiety, memory, perception, and of course, meditation doubles it. Regular practitioners, just keep it up. 10 minutes a day, you eventually turn off the timer and you just want to do it. So this might be why a lot of you who did meditation said that you found you liked doing it at night and your sleep was so amazing. So meditate. All right, got melatonin? Yeah, it's going to make you sleep. Have fun with your pictures when you do your slideshow. Have fun. Have fun, enjoy. So the question is a neurotransmitter or hormone? Who cares? It's because it is released both into the bloodstream from the pineal gland in response to darkness. And so it acts all over our body. Every cell pretty much has a receptor for it, and it is much more than sleep. It's our circadian rhythms, it's a free radical protection. It is why we look so wonderful in the morning, and it is the most powerful anti-cancer agent. And so it works at night to sweep up oxidation and to clean it up. IRISIN, it's not a molecule of meditation. It's actually one of the exercise hormones, and it was only discovered like 10 years ago, 2012. And it is produced when you exercise, when you giggle and jiggle and are shivering. It's a miracle fat burner, cancer cell apoptosis, anti-inflammatory. There's actually a couple of exercise molecules that are released that work and do wonderful stuff. And so this one's interesting because there's been so much publicity about it that they're now finding there's actually negative press on it. And so that's something else I wanted to mention is do go to the dark side on your molecule, because everything has a side that's like, like I mentioned with anandamide itself doesn't, but the whole use of THC, there are medicinal uses for THC, but there are also abuse issues with it. So yeah, IRISIN is, and remember references. So we see another one working on the AMPK pathway, and meditate wherever you are. This is in Nepal. That's Joey pretending to meditate. Smile when you meditate. Just meditate on love and opening to love, and be playful, and sing. And the weather's getting nice again. Just go outside. There's not a right or wrong way to meditate. All right. I will leave you with that, and have a beautiful day, and go meditate now and think of all the things. Bye-bye.